Good morning, everyone. My name is Ankit, and you're watching Daily Newspaper Analysis by StudyIQ IS English. Now, internally, we call daily newspaper analysis as DNA. And you know why we call it DNA? Sorry. Now, as I was saying, we call it a daily newspaper analysis, abbreviated as DNA. And you know why we call it a DNA? Because DNA or current affairs analysis is ingrained in the very DNA of UPSC exam. Because yesterday I was recording a video relating to previous year questions discussions of the year 2016, and the videos will be available soon, so do not worry. And in that analysis, I realized that the questions which have appeared in that year, particularly from PM Mudra Yojana, from MCLR, that is marginal cost based lending rate, or from payment bank, these are still relevant from 2025 perspective. So you understand the questions which appeared in 2016, they are relevant even today. And that is why I tell you that you have to follow current affairs on a daily basis. And the importance of such analysis that we provide you is that for newer students, you'll realize how newspaper reading is important from exams perspective, and from somewhat mature students and somewhat older students, you can save your time in going through all the newspapers, which will take 2 to 3 hours of your time, and in just 1 hour, I will provide you with the exact current affairs analysis. Also, we make sure to practice your learning with help of MCQs, with help of answer writing, so it is a complete package. Understood? Having said that, let us start our today's discussion. Now, these are the articles that I will be covering today, and as India is a democratic country, I make sure to follow democratic processes even in my current affairs discussion. So that is why I hold a poll that whether should we discuss human metapneumovirus today or not, because the news article is appearing almost every day in today's newspapers, and hence revising this topic is very much important. But this will cover in the last, and we'll start our today's discussion with the first article that appeared in the Hindu newspaper, that Collegium system, which is a system for appointments in higher judiciary, that is Supreme Court and High Court, has recommended the Chief Justice of Patna High Court for the Supreme Court judge. So, this will be the sum total of discussion that we'll be covering today, and the notes of this session will be available on my Telegram channel called ATS Live, which you can download immediately after the class ends. Understood? And I also share important shorts and reels on Instagram which are relevant from UPSC perspective. So if you like, you can also follow me on Instagram for UPSC related video updates. Understood? Now, before moving on to our today's discussion, let us try to solve yesterday's practice question that I have given. Which of the following statement best describes the term US entity list recently seen in the news? Now, yesterday I told you that US entity list is a list by Department of Commerce of United States government, and it imposes restrictions on certain companies and organizations who have participated in trade related to terrorism or weapons of mass destruction. And in that list, currently there are some Indian organizations which are government related entities, and as a result of those organizations in the US entity list, the trade in nuclear related components is been affected in India. And the yesterday's visit of US NSA Jake Sullivan, we saw that the US is now proposing to remove the Indian government entities from the US entity list. So, correct option to this answer is option B. It is a list maintained by United States Department of Commerce to restrict the export sensitive items to certain foreign companies. Understood? So, and this will be the mains question that I will cover today before the session ends, and it asks you to analyze the expenditure method of GDP estimation and discuss the components of such estimation and the utility of such estimation for policy making. And this you have to write in 150 words. So we'll see after our today's discussion whether we are able to write this answer or not. Understood? So without taking much of your time, let me start with the first article of the day, and this is not just one article. As you can see, I have attached screenshot to 3 different articles. Now these articles appeared in the Hindu newspaper as well as the Indian Express newspaper, and these articles highlight one thing, that Collegium recommends Patna High Court Chief Justice for the post of Supreme Court Justice. Now, the question may arise in your mind, actually, what is this Collegium system all about and why are we reading it in our today's newspaper analysis? First of all, the judiciary of India, its structure, working, etc. are important from mains perspective because we have seen questions have appeared on this topic. And India's judiciary is mentioned in GS paper 2 syllabus, hence we are going to answer that. Also from prelims perspective, questions on how many justices are there in the Supreme Court have been frequently asked in 2 to 3 prelims in general. So that is why this article becomes important not just from mains perspective but also from prelims examinations perspective. Understood? Now, actually, let us start our today's discussion by trying to understand actually what kind of or what does our there is a screenshot which is not there. Actually, what our constitution says about the appointment of judges to judiciary. Now, there is this article 124 of the constitution. It states that the President of India will appoint the members to the higher judiciary after consulting the senior judges of the Supreme Court. Now, this article 124 relates to appointments of judges to the Supreme Court of India. Similarly, there is another article called Article 213. It states that President again will appoint the members to High Court of the country after consulting the members of Supreme Court, the members of High Court, and the governor of the states in which the appointments to the high courts are being made. So you will realize the word given in the constitution says the president will appoint the members to the higher judiciary, that is in Supreme Court and High Court, after consulting the members of judiciary. So the question of our today's discussion is actually, what does this word consulting means? Does it means that the president will just ask the members of higher judiciary, or whether the president will consider seriously the opinions given by the members of the Supreme Court and High Court in cases of appointment and transfers? So this was the subject of curiosity and question as far as members of appointment of the members of Supreme Court and High Court is concerned. Now, in terms of convention, there was a healthy convention in India after it got independent, that president, it made appointment to the members of higher judiciary after consulting, let me change the color of the pen, after consulting the Chief Justice of India. And because of this consultation process, we saw that right from 1950 onwards to early 1980s, the president invariably appointed the senior most member of the court as a Chief Justice. So this was a healthy convention. Although it was not mentioned anywhere that you have to appoint the senior most judge, but government, in order to reduce the amount of conflict that should happen and increase the amount of certainty, it favored appointment of senior most Supreme Court justices as the Chief Justice of India. But all of this changed back when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister of India, because she surpassed the senior most judges and appointed Justice A.N. Ray as the next Chief Justice of India, who was third senior most judge in the Supreme Court then. So this created what you can understand a conflict between executive, that is president and government, and judiciary, that is represented by Chief Justice and the judges of Supreme Court. So as to remove this kind of conflict, the Supreme Court gave many decisions which highlighted how this approval and appointment process should actually happen. Does the word consultation means concurrence or binding decisions by the Supreme Court, or is just means simple taking the advice of the Supreme Court? So there are prominently 3 cases in this regard which we'll try to understand, and how these cases have evolved into what is known as a collegium system in the present. For example, the first judge's case, the judgment of which was passed in 1981, it was also known as S.P. Gupta versus Union of India case. Now, in this judgment, the Supreme Court highlighted that the word consultation, it did not mean concurrence. which means that the government or the president should take the advice of the Supreme Court, but the advice given by Supreme Court and its judges, it is not binding on the government, and it is the ultimate discretion of the government on who or which person they want to appoint as the judges or the chief justices of high courts and Supreme Court. Understood? So this was the first judge's case, which meant that the word consultation does not mean concurrence. But everything changed with the second judge's case of the year 1993, which is also known as Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India case. Now, in this judgment, the Supreme Court highlighted that the word consultation actually means concurrence. What do you mean by concurrence? That is, whatever opinion given by the justices of the High Courts and Supreme Court, it is binding on the government. That is, government is bound by aid and advice of Supreme Court in order to make transfers and appointment to the members of higher judiciary. So here we understood the word consultation did not mean concurrence. However, it changed with second judge's case of the year 1993. And in this judgment also, the Supreme Court highlighted that in case of appointment of members to the higher judiciary, the opinion of Chief Justice of India is not enough. Rather, Chief Justice of India should consult two senior most judges of Supreme Court, and the judgment or the advice given by these three members will be called as the advice given by the Collegium system. And hence, we saw with second judge's cases the emergence of Collegium system in India. Now, there was this third judge's cases of the year 1998, and in this judgment, the Supreme Court changed the composition of Collegium. Because from second judge's cases, you can understand the composition, it included Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges. But in third judge's case, what the Supreme Court said, that this Collegium now will be represented in case of Supreme Court by Chief Justice of India and four senior most judges. Whereas the appointment and transfers of judges to High Court is concerned, here the Chief Justice of India will consult two senior most judges of Supreme Court and also judges who are experienced in that particular High Court. So the Collegium system effectively, it included Chief Justice of India plus two senior most judges in this second judge's case, and it increased to Chief Justice of India plus four senior most judges cases. Understood? So this is how the Collegium system or the structure and the strength of Collegium system actually increased in the third judge's cases. Now, even currently, the appointments to the higher judiciary is currently done by Collegium system. That is, in cases of appointment to Supreme Court, the advice given by the Chief Justice of India, it is given after he consults four other senior most judges of Supreme Court, and in cases of High Court, he consults two senior most judges of the Supreme Court in addition to other senior judges of Supreme Court who have experience of working in a particular High Court in which the appointments are made. Now, this system resulted into confrontation with the government in general. You understand? And government, it tried to remove this confrontation by changing the structure of appointment or abolishing the Collegium system. Because when Narendra Modi government came into power in 2014, what it did actually was that it changed or made an amendment into the constitution, that is 99th Constitutional Amendment Act. And this Amendment Act, it provided that the government will make appointments to the members of higher judiciary through what is known as a National Judicial Appointments Commission. And this commission will not just comprise of Chief Justice of India and senior judges of the High Court, but it will also include the members which are appointed by the government. For example, Union Law Minister and eminent individuals who again are appointees of the Union government. Understood? So this is how the structure of judiciary was changed. However, Supreme Court in its judgment called now as fourth judge's case, that is Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association case, in this judgment, Supreme Court invalidated the 99th Amendment Act because according to Supreme Court, this went against the independence of judiciary, and according to Supreme Court, this independence of judiciary is a part of basic structure of India's constitution. Thereby, the government cannot change this particular system in the amendment of the constitution. Hence, it was declared as unconstitutional and void. So, as NGAC was declared unconstitutional and void, and therefore the Collegium system, which now includes Chief Justice of India and 4 other Supreme Court judges, is the method through which the appointment of judges to higher judiciary are done. So this was the things related to Collegium system. Now let us see whether we are able to solve the first practice question of the day. Consider the following statements regarding the Collegium system in Indian judiciary. The first statement, Collegium system is explicitly mentioned in the Constitution of India. Is Collegium system explicitly mentioned? The answer is incorrect, because as I already told you, Article 124, Article 213, they state that the President of India must consult senior judges of Supreme Court. However, the word of Collegium is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. Therefore, first statement here is incorrect. Now, good morning, Kalpana. Good morning, Siddharam. Good morning, Narsimha. Good morning, Kandam. Good to see you all here in the morning. Now, let me just try to change the settings here. Now, as I was saying, moving to the second statement, this system of Collegium consists of Chief Justice of India and a group of senior judges of the Supreme Court. Yes, this is a correct statement. As I told you, for appointments to members of Supreme Court, it consists of Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges of Supreme Court, whereas in cases of High Court appointment, it consists of Chief Justice of India plus 2 senior most members of High Court, in addition to other members of Supreme Court who have experiences in working in that particular High Court. So, second statement here is correct. Moving to the third statement, the Collegium system, it is responsible for appointment and transfer of judges to the Supreme Court, High Court and district courts in India. Now, this is where the question, this statement here, you have to read it correctly, because although I told you Collegium system is responsible for appointments to the members of Supreme Court and High Court, however, appointment to the judges of district court is done by state government and not by the Collegium system of the Supreme Court. So, this third statement here is incorrect. Now, which of the statement given above is or are correct? This should have been incorrect. Sorry for the mistake here. And you have to identify incorrect statements. First and third are incorrect. Therefore, option C here is the right answer. Understood? No, Kalpana, option B was not correct, because as you can see, third statement here is incorrect, as district courts or appointments to the district court and transfers of judges of district court is undertaken by the state government and not the Collegium system. Hence, third statement here is incorrect. Understood? So, now let us move to another article. This article also consists of many articles that have appeared in today's The Hindu and Indian Express newspaper, and these articles point out to just one thing, that the UGC, it has brought a new draft rules. Now, what is this draft rule and why it has resulted into such a controversy that even Tamil Nadu Chief Minister is saying that the government of Tamil Nadu will oppose these draft rules? Let us try to find out in today's discussion. And why am I taking this article? Because as you can understand, developments related to social sector, particularly the education sector, is mentioned in the GS paper 2 syllabus. And these kind of draft rules also, though not very important from prelims perspective, but these changes the way appointments as to the universities in India is made. And there may be a question in mains examination, particularly on such related developments. So that is why we are discussing this article. Now, what are the changes that have been actually made in the minimum qualification for appointment and promotion of teachers and academic staff regulations? Let us try to find out in our today's discussion. First of all, let us try to understand what is this University Grants Commission is all about. Now, this is a statutory body. Why statutory? Because it was enacted as per the UGC Act of the year 1956, and the responsible ministry is Ministry of Education, particularly the Department of Higher Education. Now, the function of UGC is to first of all coordinate, determine and maintain the standards of university education in India. And to maintain the standards of university education, this body provides the recognition to India's universities and also grants them the financial contribution to these accredited universities. And you can understand, running a university incurs a lot of cost. And most of these costs are provided by the government through the grants given by University Grants Commission. Also, there are other processes through which educational institutions can get funding, such as private funding. However, it is not adequately desired in a country like India. So, through state funding, particularly government funding, it is provided by the University Grants Commission. Now, what are the key changes and provisions made in the draft rules? First is that related to the appointments of Vice Chancellor. Now, Vice Chancellor, you understand, they are de facto heads of the universities, as they are responsible for administration of the university, and the appointments of Vice Chancellor is actually a very touchy political point. Now, through the changes made in the draft regulation, the government has now said that a 3-member search and selection committee will now appoint the members of the or the vice chancellors of the university. Now, this 3-member selection committee will be constituted by the chancellor of that particular university, which in many cases is the governor of a particular state. However, governor is only a ceremonial head of the university. The real head or the de facto head actually is the vice chancellor, and he or she will be appointed by a search and selection committee, which will be a 3-member committee, and it comprises of a chairperson who will be the nominee of chancellor or a visitor. Hence, you can understand he or she will be a nominee of state government. Whereas the other members, they include nominee of the UGC chairman and a representative of the university's apex body. So, this will include syndicate, senate, executive council, etc. And these bodies of the university, they will appoint their representative in the search and selection committee. Understood? So, this has representation of a nominee who is appointed by the state government. It has a nominee of the central government that is appointed by the UGC chairman, and it has a representative which is appointed by the university's apex body. So, it is an inclusive body. Also, the criteria of appointment is that the candidates who are filing for the applications to be considered as a vice chancellor of a particular university must possess high academic qualification and also demonstrate significant leadership qualities. So, these are the changes that are made in the draft rules. Now, let us try to understand who or what kind of persons are actually eligible to be appointed as vice chancellors. First of all, professors who are at least having 10 years of experiences in higher education institutions, they can submit their applications. And now the important change is that individuals at senior levels in the industry, public administration, even in public sector undertakings who have a proven track record of significant scholarly contributions, even they can be appointed as a vice chancellor to the university. So that is why you can understand this changes made in the draft rules has actually expanded the pool of candidates, and it now opens the position of vice chancellor even to the experts and veterans of the public sector and industrial sector. So this measure, in my opinion, increases the chances of academia and industry collaboration, because you just don't need to educate people, but you also need to provide employment to the people, and hence their employment worthiness can be improved by inclusion of experts from the industrial sector in the administration of universities across the India. Understood? Now, let us try to understand other important changes. First of all, the criteria of appointing faculties have now been made more flexible. That is, people who have qualified the NET or SET exams and they teach a particular subject in the universities, now they can also teach subjects which are other than their graduate and postgraduate degrees, especially those subjects in which the candidates are developing or undergoing a PhD specialization. So this enables the people who have said, for example, gotten their degree in UG or PG in engineering, but they are underdoing a PhD specialization in a subject relating to arts, so they can even teach arts in the university. Also, it eliminates the academic performance indicators which were brought earlier, because these academic performance indicators primarily judges the ability of a candidate based on the how many research papers they have published. But we know in India, these research papers almost every time are not of that high quality. So these research papers and the validity of these research papers in providing the qualification of the candidates have been reduced. Rather than quantitative parameters, now notable contributions across 9 categories will also be considered in promoting and appointing many professors and VCs. Also, the contract teacher appointments are very essential in smooth functioning of universities, because these teachers in a way are government servants. However, they will be retiring after a particular age. So as to fill the gaps on a temporary basis, the university almost invariably appoints a teacher based on their contracts. However, earlier there was this 10% cap, that is, if the university has 100 teachers, maximum only 10 teachers can be appointed on a contractual basis. However, this created impediments in filling up of vacancies, and hence such cap has now been removed by the virtue of new draft rules. So these are the changes that were highlighted in the draft rules, and you can understand this increases the flexibility of persons who can be appointed as VCs. It increases the flexibility of what kind of subjects can a teacher teach. It increases the flexibility for universities to appoint contract teachers, and also eliminates the academic performance indicators which primarily judged a candidate's potential based on the amount of journals they have actually published. And rather than these quantitative figures, now notable contributions will also be considered before appointing teachers and VCs. Understood? Now, as I tell you daily, you can log in or visit this particular link on the website, and this link will provide you with the course that I put on YouTube, also on our website. And the benefits of accessing such courses on our website is that you can access PPT and class notes right there itself. You will be able to download these videos, which you can even watch without the internet connection, and you can practice your analysis daily with the help of interactive MCQs, and it will hone your newspaper reading skills, etc. Understood? Now let us quickly move to another article of the day. This one appeared in the Explain section of the Indian Express, and this article states that the GDP estimates which were published yesterday, it highlights that India's growth rate is reducing. Now, national income accounting, particularly the methods used for GDP estimation, they are important from GS paper 3 perspective, because GS paper 3 syllabus highlights what? Issues relating to Indian economy, and issues relating to slowdown of economic growth is an important issue from news perspective and also from exams perspective. Further, in 2023, we saw a mains question appeared, and this mains question asked you to identify methodologies used to estimate the employment and GDP in the country. So these kind of questions you will be able to answer if you follow the newspaper articles on a daily basis, and today's article will help you solve a one mains question that I will be discussing before today's session ends. Understood? Now, first of all, let us try to understand what is the context of today's article. And as you can see, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, which is responsible for estimating the national income of our country, it has released first advance estimate of India's GDP growth in the current financial year. But you will ask, the financial year, that is 2024 and 25, will end on 31st of March. So how can the ministry publish the estimates of this year's economic growth? The answer is that it estimates using the past data and the current year's data, and it extrapolates the current year's data based on past trends to come at a conclusion at what the India's GDP growth will look like at the end of 31st March. So this is the first advance estimate which is published by the Ministry of Statistics of Implementation even before the current financial year ends. Now, this guides and provides the information on what kind of economic growth the country is currently ongoing. Understood? Now, as per the first advance estimate, it estimates the GDP of our country. Now, what is GDP? GDP is actually sum total of goods and services which is produced in India's domestic borders. Understood? So, this is what GDP is all about, and it determines the size of Indian economy. And as per the first advance estimate, which is given by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, India's nominal GDP, it is expected to be at around 324 lakh crore rupees by the March end. And it means that India's nominal GDP, it increased by 9.7% over last financial year. Now, this is India's nominal GDP given in rupees, but when you divide this number by 85, which is the value of rupee per single dollar, you will get India's GDP in terms of US dollar, that will be $3.8 trillion. Now, this will be India's size of nominal GDP in this financial year. Now, this nominal GDP, which was announced by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, it is lower than the budget estimates which was provided by the Finance Ministry in its budget documents. Because Finance Ministry in interim budget highlighted India's economy will be 328 lakh crore worth of GDP in the financial year, whereas its full budget which was presented in July, it said 326 lakh crore, whereas the estimates given by MOSPI, you can see, is lesser than these two numbers. So, this highlights that as the year progresses, the MOSPI has realized India's economy is growing downwards. Now, this was nominal GDP that I told you, but nominal GDP includes the effects of inflation and includes the effects of production. But theoretically, even if I'm producing same amount of goods and services every year, the India's GDP will increase. Why? Because there is a factor called inflation. As inflation results into increase in prices, and therefore you can understand the final value of all those same goods and services which is produced every year will increase. So, in order to estimate what is actually the increase in growth in goods and services, we have to eliminate the effects of inflation on the economy, and by eliminating the inflation from nominal GDP, we come at what is called as a real GDP. And accordingly to the first advance estimates, the India's real GDP will be 184.9 lakh crores as against India's nominal GDP of rupees 324 lakh crores, and this is just 57% of nominal GDP. Now, regardless of what the nominal GDP and real GDP numbers are, the analysis of this article highlights that India's economic growth rate is actually deaccelerating, which means although India is witnessing economic growth rate, but the growth rate or the pace of that growth rate has actually reduced or deaccelerated. Now, this is quite clear from the graph that I have put here, that as you can see, India witnessed an economic slowdown during the COVID-19 pandemic, naturally because of shutdown and lockdowns, etc. However, India's economy grew after the lockdowns were released or eased out. However, after that year end, you can see even the nominal and real GDP, they have reduced in the successive years. So, this highlights the downward trajectory of India's economic growth, that although India is growing positively and compared to other nations of the world, India is witnessing higher economic growth, but when it compared to the original growth levels which is set by India, it is reducing. For example, since financial year 2020, which was 1 year before COVID-19 pandemic, since then India has averaged growth rate of around 4.8% every year. To put things in perspective, from 1991 onwards till now, India's average growth rate is 7%. So that is why India, in last 5 years, India's economic growth has been below average of what it was earlier. And this highlights the strange and downward trajectory of India's economic growth. Now, what are the factors which has pulled down India's growth prospects? Let us try to understand that in our next slide. Now, to estimate or to calculate GDPs, there are various methods such as income method, expenditure method. However, to understand our today's discussion, we will try to understand what is this expenditure method in calculation of GDP. Now, every expenses which are made by corporates, individuals, government in the country, they are calculated and added to come at a conclusion of what the GDP is all about. And to ease out the process, we have categorized these spendings in four main categories, which are also called as engines of economic growth. Now, these include private final consumption expenditure, which is expenditures incurred by individuals like you and I, and this constitutes about 60% of India's GDP, and it is the highest. It has the highest share in the contribution to our GDP. This is followed by gross fixed capital formation, which is basically investment made by both government and corporate sector. For example, government constructs road, corporate sector establishes new industries, establishes new machinery, etc. And all of this are calculated as gross fixed capital formation, and it has second highest share of about 30% to our GDP. The third contribution is made by government final consumption expenditure, which is the expenditure made by government in its day-to-day functioning, such as providing salaries, pensions, etc. And this constitutes about 10% of our GDP. Now, the fourth component is net exports, which is the difference between exports out of India and imports into India. And India has been traditionally an importer country, which means imports in India are more than exports, and that is why the net exports, they contribute negatively to our nation's GDP. So, these are the four components based on which we have categorized the spendings made in the economy. Now, highest portion I told you belong to private final consumption expenditure, which is 60% of the GDP. And in recent times, we have witnessed lower in the consumption levels of the economy because of various reasons, such as increase in taxes, lesser disposable income of people, and this has pulled down the economy in general. Also, whenever there is a less demand for goods and services because of reduction in private final consumption expenditure, it also discourages many companies from incurring investments into their plants, because why would any company increase their capacity if the corresponding demand for their goods and services is not there in the market? Also, the investment by the government has been constrained in recent times because government is trying to borrow less amount of money in order to reduce its fiscal deficits. Hence, even the government's financial consumption expenditure has reduced in order to keep the levels of debt lower. And all of this has net resulted into reduction in the growth prospects of Indian economy. Understood? So, this was all related to today's discussion of GDP's estimates. And let us try to move to another article which appeared also in the explain section of Indian Express, and this article highlights that HAL's advanced light helicopter, it recently crashed near Porbandar, which belonged to Indian Coast Guard, and it resulted into death of 3 occupants of this helicopter. Now, this is a second fatal crash belonging to the Coast Guard helicopter in past 4 months, and this highlights that although such helicopters is very important for our nation's armed forces, however, there are significant risks associated as well. So, from exams perspective, the crash itself is not important. What is important is the indigenous advanced light helicopter. So, let us try to understand what kind of features this helicopter has. It actually is a multi-role and multi-mission light utility helicopter which belongs to 5.5 ton weight category class, and the intention of building this helicopter was to enable it to be used in military as well as civil purposes. For example, military use it to transport its troops, goods, etc., and civil operators, they use it for transportation purposes as well as goods delivery purposes. Now, this is used by all 3 branches of Indian military, that is Army, Navy as well as Air Forces, in addition to be used by other bodies such as Coast Guard. And civil operators, they include not just operators in India but also in other countries such as Ecuador, Mauritius, Maldives and Nepal. And this helicopter was designed and developed indigenously by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Now, additional features of these helicopters is that it has twin engines, which makes it less crash prone, and also it can carry up to 14 passengers, which includes 2 pilots. And this is advanced and equipped with range of advanced avionics and sensors, which includes a glass cockpit. As it increases the visibility for pilots, it produces a digital autopilot, which reduces the workload of pilots, and it also has an all-weather radar, which makes it worthy of flying even in drastic and extreme weather conditions. And using this kind of sensors and facilities, these advanced helicopters have been extensively used by our armed forces in transporting troops in northern borders, especially in Himalayan regions, in undertaking disaster management related activities, especially when a disaster is struck. Hence, you can understand the utility of these helicopters. And these have been used in variety of roles. For example, search and rescue, medical evacuation, troop transport, cargo transport, and also in provision of disaster relief and humanitarian aid missions. So this is the benefit of using such helicopters, and this was designed and developed indigenously, as most of its components, including the airframe, is constructed in India. Earlier, some of the critical components like engines, avionics, etc., they had to be imported. However, with collaboration with many companies belonging to Western nations such as Safran Helicopter Engines of France, the government and the HAL has been enabled to increase the indigenous components in the helicopter, and hence making it completely indigenous. Understood? Now let us try to solve practice question. Now questions based on various military platforms. For example, in 2016 there was this question in what is actually INS Ashtradharini. So I have modified that question of 2016 and I have curated this practice question for you. It is quite a straightforward questions. Every one of you who is watching this video, kindly comment the correct answers in the comment section, as I will be waiting, and let me see who comments the correct answer first. Now, if you are able to see this question, I will be moving to another article of the day, which appeared actually yesterday, but because of technical reasons, I was unable to complete the session yesterday. So I am making sure, because of my professional commitment towards you, that I will complete the left out articles of yesterday today. Now, this article appeared on page 7 in yesterday's Indian Express newspaper, and it says that ISRO has been able to grow cowpea seeds which has sprouted leaves in the outer space. Now, cowpea seeds in Hindi, they are known as lobia and are used in various purposes, and they are rich in protein content. And this kind of news article, that is growth of plants, especially in outer space, it is important from GS paper 3 perspective, because this highlights developments relating to space sector. So let us understand first of all the context of today's article. It states it is a milestone for ISRO because the cowpea seedlings that it sent to space as a part of mission which was sent by PSLV C-60 mission, it conducted a biological experiment, and this biological experiment was conducted in outer space on December the 30th. And as a result of this experiment, these sprouts have resulted or sprouted their first leaves. Now, this experiment was done as a part of ISRO's first biological experiment in space, that is through CROPS mission, as this was an automated platform designed to cultivate and sustain a plant life in the microgravity conditions of space. So you understand such a huge achievement for India, that in its first biological mission in space, the achievement includes sprouting of the leaves in the outer space. Now let us try to understand what is this CROPS payload. It was developed by Vikram Sarabhai Space Venture, which is located in Thumba in Kerala. And the mission was designed to study plant growth in microgravity conditions, because ISRO wants to develop the capability of growing plants in the extraterrestrial region, which will promote the agricultural research in India. Also, it is a fully automated system which plans to germinate seeds and sustain them until the two-leaf stage process. And in this mission, 8 cowpea seeds were sent into the space, and they were placed in a closed box environment which had an active thermal regulation, and out of these 8 seedlings, 3 have sprouted leaves. So this is a significant achievement. And what is the importance of such achievements? Let us try to find out. First of all, it marks and paves the way for ISRO to conduct future extraterritorial or extraterrestrial cultivation. As you can understand right now, whatever astronauts we send into space, we have to provide the entire food requirement of theirs in the space mission, and it increases the amount of payload that we are sending in space. So as to reduce the amount of payload and enable the astronauts to stay longer in space, we need to develop capabilities of growing the crops in the outer space atmosphere, and that is the reason why such a mission is quite significant. And this mission also included other payloads which was done over the POEM module, and it included experiments for studying plant cells in microgravity, which was a mission by Amity University, and growth curve of gut bacteria space, which was the mission of RV College of Engineering of Bangalore. So these are kind of not just government missions but also missions taken by private universities, as it has resulted into significant achievements for India's space sector. Now, let us try to solve another practice question with reference to ISRO's CROPS, that is Compact Research Module for Orbital Plant Studies. Consider the following statement. First statement, it aims to study the effects of microgravity on the growth and development of plants in space. This is a straightforward statement, and hence from our today's discussion you can say this is a correct statement. The research is specifically targeted at supporting agricultural experiments for Mars colonization. Now, it wants to cultivate crops in outer space, but does it specifically target Mars colonization? The answer here is no, because this is applicable for each and every planetary body that exists in our solar system and not specifically targeted at a planet Mars. So second statement is correct, and we have to incorrect, and we have to identify correct statements. Therefore, option A here is the right answer. Now, let us try to move to another article. This one appeared also in the explain section in yesterday's Indian Express newspaper, that was on page 11, and it says that the script of Indus Valley civilization still even today remains a mystery, and such developments are important part of our art and culture syllabus, and hence it is important from GS paper 1 perspective. And art and culture, especially with relation to Indus Valley civilization, we have seen questions on Indus Valley civilization have appeared in prelims and mains as well. That is why such article is very important. Now let us try to understand why the script of the Indus Valley civilization is in news. And this is because the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Mr. M.K. Stalin has offered a sum total prize money of $1 million for anyone who is able to decipher the script of Indus Valley civilization. Now, this was in news because State Archaeological Department of Tamil Nadu, it has published a study which says that there are striking similarities between signs and graffitis found in Indus Valley civilization and with those which are found in the region of Tamil Nadu by a process of archaeological excavation. And hence, this is why the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister has announced a prize money of $1 million. Now, these kind of activities by politicians in India and also some scholars, these are examples of cultural appropriation, because although Indus Valley civilization is a historic civilization, however, the links of that civilization to our particular existing population have not been established, and hence each and every governmental organization and scholars, they have tried to appropriate the legacy of Indus Valley civilization and tell that they are our actual ancestors. And Tamil Nadu government's attempt is no different, because you have to realize in general, there is no particular language which belongs to you and I. That there is no my language, there is no your language. But every language in India is our language. For example, Hindi is my language and so is Tamil. Marathi is my language and so is Bengali. So for India's growth and prosperity, we should not focus on one particular language, rather assimilate and absorb every possible language. And this is what the spirit of India is all about. Understood? Now, let us try to understand what is Indus Valley civilization. It existed in the northwest part of our country, that is in present date of Western India as well as in present Pakistan. And this civilization reached its zenith in 2600 to 1900 before Common Era. And this area sprawled over about 8 lakh square kilometers, which is today located in northwestern India, that is states such as Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, as well as the parts of Pakistan. And it is one of the world's most sophisticated urban culture at the time because it had an elaborate system of trade, taxation as well as drainage. And even India in today's terms cannot manage the drainage systems which was then back 4000 years in the Indus Valley civilization. Now there have been attempts, as I told you, to decipher the script of Indus Valley civilization, which was found on many inscriptions such as seals and terracotta tablets, and this were highlighted in form of animals and human motifs. However, despite many attempts, the scholars have not been able to identify this forgotten script, and they even do not agree on the number of symbols that are there in the script. For example, there was this notable archaeologist called Dr. S.R. Rao. He postulated back in 1982 that the script of Harappan civilization or Indus Valley civilization, it contained as many as 62 signs. And since then, scholars have long attempted to find linkages with present India to that of earlier Indus Valley civilization, and S.R. Rao was the opinion that he was able to establish linkages between Indus script and the language of Sanskrit, because Sanskrit, you can understand, is the mother language of all Indian languages, particularly in the languages belonging to northern area. And these attempts to link IVC with that of Vedic period was to justify the claim that Vedic people were actually people indigenous to India and they were not the emigrants from the Eurasian region, particularly those who invaded India in form of Indo-Aryan invasions. And these were the attempts made by scholars to prove that India's language was the ancestor of Sanskrit and Sanskrit rather is not a product of Indo-Aryan invasion of India. Now this claim by Dr. S.R. Rao was refuted by a Finnish archaeologist called Asko Parpola, and he highlighted that there were as many as 425 signs in the Indus Valley script. So you understand, there have been attempts both in northern India and southern India to appropriate the culture and heritage of IVC, and they want to link it with Sanskrit in north and with Tamil in south. So this kind of cultural misappropriation of any historical example represents the current truth of India's country. Understood? Now, the background of this study was actually a report published by Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology, which involved documentation, digitization and categorization of over 15,000 graffiti bearing pot shards and 140 archaeological sites across Tamil Nadu. And these were compared with 4,000 artifacts that were recovered from Indus Valley sites. And the study said that it established 42 base signs, 544 variants and 1,521 composite forms that were identified from Tamil Nadu sites. And out of these 42 base signs, nearly 60% were found in parallel with Indus Valley script. Also, more than 90% of graffiti which are found in southern India, particularly in Tamil Nadu, they resemble the graffiti marks of the Indus Valley civilization. So the attempts by Tamil Nadu State Department was actually made in order to establish the linkages between Tamil culture and Tamil language with that of IVC's script. Also, you have to understand why even today the scientists and archaeologists, they have not been able to decipher what is written in the Indus Valley script because of many reasons. First of all is that Indus Valley scripts, they do not contain any multilingual inscriptions, because it was earlier expected that although Indus Valley civilizations, they were involved in trade with Mesopotamian civilizations. However, even with trade, such multilingual inscriptions which had more than one languages, they were not there. And had the multilingual inscriptions been there, it would have been easier to estimate what a known language is written, and we can translate that language into the IVC and back and forth. Also, the language of Indus Valley civilization is not known to the scholars, and because of that, they are into the territory that they do not know the language and they do not know the script. So identifying the script based on an unknown language is a difficult proposition which the scientists and archaeologists are currently facing with respect to Indus Valley civilization script. Also, there are many seals which have been identified as a part of Indus Valley civilization and its related excavation. However, each seals they only have an average of 5 characters. So as to establish the congruency, that has not happened. Also, many Harappan sites they remain undiscovered even today, and those which have been discovered they also remain underexplored, and these are the reasons why the government, scholars, scientists, etc., they have not been able to decipher what is written in the Indus Valley civilization script. Understood? Now let us try to solve the last article of the day. I held a poll on my Telegram channel whether I should cover this or not, and India being a democratic country, I saw that more than 70% of the students they wanted this article to be covered and revised today. So let us try to understand what is this human metapneumovirus, and it is important from GS paper 3 perspective, and it also appeared in yesterday's newspaper. So the context of today's article is that the Union Minister of Health, Mr. JP Nadda, has highlighted that the human metapneumovirus, it is not a new virus because it originated in China in 2001, and hence the circulation has been there in many years, and there is no reason to worry for Indian citizens in general because this virus is not a new virus, and the cases of HMPV virus have been confirmed in states such as Karnataka, Gujarat as well as Tamil Nadu. Understood? So in that regard, let us try to understand what is this human metapneumovirus, which is abbreviated as HMPV virus. It is a respiratory virus which causes mild infection, much similar to that of common cold. And this family of virus belongs to Pneumoviridae family, which also consists of respiratory syncytial virus, measles and mumps. And the primarily people who are affected by these kinds of viruses are children, elderly citizens, and those who have weak immune system and weak immune capacity. And that is why they are more susceptible to be infected by this virus, and they are also more susceptible in developing complications associated with this virus. Now, the signs and symptoms of persons who are affected by the virus is resembling the common cold, as people may witness or have coughy, runny or blocked nose, sore throat, fever and wheezing, and in most people the illnesses it goes away within a period of few days with just rest and supportive care. However, in few people, especially the ones I highlighted in the last slide, that are children, elderly and the people with weak immune response, there is a chance that complications such as bronchitis or pneumonia may arise, which will require immediate medical attention or care. And hence, we may pay close attention in trying to prevent people from getting infected by these viruses. Now, in terms of treatment and spread, this can spread through contact with an infected person or objects, and the treatment of this virus is not available right now because there is no vaccine in order to prevent this virus, and also no specific antiviral therapy which can treat such viruses. And hence, what most people require is over-the-counter medications to relieve their pain and fever. Also, there is no antibiotic which can work on this virus. Now, in terms of prevention, people are required to avoid close contacts with infected person, and they can also decide to wear mask if they are to visit in public localities. So this is how you can prevent this virus from getting infected to you and your loved ones. And in case such viruses do infect you, in most cases the symptoms they only resemble common cold, and only there is a minute chances that such viruses can lead to complications, especially in elderly, children and people with weak immune response. Understood? And the treatment is not available in form of specific antiviral therapy or vaccine, and hence people rely on over-the-counter medications. Understood? Now, this is the last practice question which I will be covering tomorrow. So please ensure you answer it correctly in the comment section, and I will take up the discussion of this question tomorrow before the session starts. Understood? Now, today the participation of students have been somewhat less. I am witnessing less exuberance. Please, are you watching this session or not? Please let me know in the comments below. Now let us take up the practice question that I had given in the session before the session started. The expenditure method of GDP estimation provides critical insights into structure and dynamics of the economy, and discuss the components of expenditure method used to calculate and analyze its significance in policy making. All you have to write in just 150 words. So this question also is quite straightforward, but it is also challenging in the aspect that you have to answer just in 150 words. And naturally, like all our questions, we will divide our questions into three parts, that is intro, body, as well as conclusion. Now for introduction, you will define what is GDP. That is, it is sum total of goods or some monetary total of goods and services which is produced in India every year. That is in India's domestic territory. That is the introduction of GDP. Now in body, you will write that there are many instances such as income method, expenditure method, and gross value added method which are used to calculate GDP. Expenditure method is one of them. Now expenditure method, as I already told you, calculates or collates all the expenditures which are made by various sectors in the economy, which are government, private consumption by individuals like you and I, investment, as well as the net exports. Now, in addition to mentioning the components, you will also highlight their respective share in the GDP. That is 10% for government expenditure, for private consumption it is 60%, for investment it is 30%, and for net exports it is negative because India is a net importer of goods and services. So, this will be the body. And in addition, you also have to write the significance of GDP estimation in policy making. What are significance? First of all, it tells you whether India is growing high with a high growth rate or not. It gives an evidence based on which the government can demonstrate and activate its policy, such as an expansionary fiscal policy which will increase the money supply in the economy. It will help the government estimates India's growth prospects with other countries. It will help government discharge many policy implications. So these are the significance of GDP estimation. With conclusion, you will say that expenditure method is one of the methods based on which we can estimate GDP, and current expenditure methods highlight that there are slowdown in government expenditure, in private consumption, and in investment expenditure made by both private and government agencies. So this will how you conclude today's answer. Now students who are trying to attempt this question, please make sure to write this answer, and if you want to get it evaluated by me, please post your answers in the Telegram group, the link of which is provided here, and I will make sure to upload this class notes also in the Telegram video immediately after the class ends. So this was all for today's discussion. We will see you again tomorrow at 10 AM. Until then, keep studying, keep revising, and keep writing.